A group needs a leader with nerves of steel. Here's your look at the brand new Super7 Silverhawks Ultimates Quicksilver. Quicksilver is the leader of the Silverhawks, and he reports directly as Stargazer. He is the human partner of the cyborg bird Tallyhawk, a human law enforcement officer modified into a cyborg to withstand the effects of hyper-travel through space. This grants him enhanced physical abilities, such as strength, agility, and speed. He has a hawk-like faceplate that he can lower to cover his face while flying or fighting, as well as built-in wings for atmospheric and space flying and gliding. He has built-in laser in his arm, located in a blue band for combat, and retractable talons in his feet for attacking while flying. Now, finally coming to you at lightning speed is the leader of the Silverhawks. What's rather funny, though, about the release of Quicksilver is that he was part of Wave 1. For anybody that has been collecting or is in the know when it comes to the Silverhawks figures from Super 7, we did in fact get Wave 2 first before they backtracked back and gave us Wave 1. For whatever reasons that may have been, whether they wanted to go in and fix maybe some of the issues that had plagued one or two of the figures from the first wave, we finally at least get ourselves the leader of the Silverhawks. We're going to go ahead and grab the tape measure just to see how tall Quicksilver stands. Starting first in inches, the figure is about 6.5 or maybe even 6 3/4 of an inch tall, and that works out to be a figure that's about 18 centimeters in height. From at least what we've done so far. Bringing in a couple of the other Silverhawk figures now for comparisons. Here's what Quicksilver looks like along with Bluegrass. And here's also what the figure looks like with Steel Will. One thing that we haven't yet had the chance to look at, which we will be looking at in an upcoming review, is Steelheart, the twin sister to Steel Will. One thing I will say, though, looking at these, is it does seem a little bit like Quicksilver might be out of scale with the other two figures on either side of him. Maybe not as much when we're comparing it, say, with Bluegrass, but I do feel like Steel Will should be a lot then bigger than Quicksilver, not the other way around. As for, though, Quicksilver's accessories, while he doesn't really have anything specifically linked to one or two episodes, like may have been the case when we looked at Steel Will, for example, he does come at least with the things I would expect a character like Quicksilver to have, like his swappable arms that has the wings attached, his drawn-down faceplates, and, of course, not just one, but two versions of Tallyhawk. Well, rather interesting thing about Tallyhawk, though, is there is the version that's perched, that you can have it resting on his arm. It's a little harder to do it, mind you. And then there's one also that has the wings already extended out. Now, you'll notice the one that has the wings out already has the screeching face. The one that has the perched pose does have the mouth closed. But what you can actually do with these, which I'm glad to see they did, is that you can remove the heads. They simply pop out by pegs. Just remove the one from one body and detach the one from the other. And then you can replace these then if you want to. So if, for example, you want to have Tallyhawk that's perched on his arm, you can actually have it then snapped and changed and have it with the screeching face instead. The detailing on this is quite good. A lot of people, I'm sure, that would have wanted these to look more like the toys will be a little more disappointed the fact that they don't have the vac chrome finish. But considering that we've already gotten ourselves toy versions of the Thundercats, I would imagine it'd be safe to say as well that Super 7 have planned down the road, down the pipeline, probably toy versions or chrome version figures of the Silverhawks that we're going to be looking at right now. These are all, of course, more based on the cartoon. But I can't imagine that they're going to be not reusing these molds. Get the most mileage out of the molds, after all, and I'm sure we are going to be getting, I'm only guessing at least, chrome finish of these figures. This Tallyhawk does have technically articulation by the fact that you can rotate the head back and forth. The wings don't seem to be something that moves, but he does have little articulation points in his knees. He also has it on the tops of his thighs, so between the two you can move him back and forth. My Tallyhawk, unfortunately, is a little loose here in the knees. I don't know if necessarily they need to point joints right there in the knees. Considering he does have the articulation at the top of the thigh, I think that was more than enough. It didn't have to necessarily be right here. It's hard, unfortunately, to get Tallyhawk to balance onto the arm of Quicksilver, as there really isn't a place for the figure to necessarily tab onto. There's no magnets, there's no tabs. So you're literally just taking Tallyhawk and you're doing your best to rest it on top of his arm. This makes things then very much more difficult when you have it spinning on a turntable. like the guy was doing at the beginning of the review. But you can see it does balance on there, but it's just barely teetering onto the forearms. One thing you can kind of do is twist the arm just a little bit, so it's actually sitting on more a narrow part of its forearm and kind of just resting it there. The broadness, though, of where it gets close to the elbow does cause a little more of a problem for Tallyhawk to get proper footing, but you can, in theory, balance the bird on top of his forearm. And of course, then you can, you probably could also take the Tallyhawk that has the wings fanned and do the exact same thing. But I still feel like the knees didn't necessarily have to be things that are, let's just get his arm down here for a second. I don't think it necessarily needed to be something that needed to be articulated on Tallyhawk. Yes, it's nice that they have these as moving back and forth, but considering there's articulation already at the top of the thigh, I don't think it necessarily needed it down below in the knees, considering that mine already are loose. This version of Tallyhawk with its wings fanned out, the one I prefer of the two, does have no articulation in the tail. It has no articulation here in the wings. It's simply, again, just in the head and in the lower legs, both in the thigh and in the knees as well. I like the idea, though, they had swappable face options or head options for Tallyhawk. Put those down for right now. The figure also then comes included with swappable hands. As of right now, the figure does have closed fists in the sockets of his forearms. They do seem a little on the smaller side, but he also does come with a gripping hand, for example, of a human hand. And then he has, of course, the more cybernetic hand. He basically has the same hand then the other way around. So if the metal side of his body, he has a hand for that. And it's pretty much just a mirror flip of the human hand that he has on the opposite side. So he has those hands. Then, of course, he does have the flying hands. Good for, of course, when you're swapping out for the wings. And then finally, the figure also has more gestured hands. A little harder to hold on to at times. There we go. You can see, again, like nicely detailed, I should say, at least nicely sculpted hands. It's very much different from one another. You can see like this one has a little bit more of like metal plating, the way they've actually sculpted the top of the hand. It also has a little bit more defined knuckles, something that the human hand can't say that it has. Move those to the side. The figure also then comes, of course, included with his wing arms. Now, the wing arms does also have a little hole to the top here where you can have the projected beams that they fire out from the shoulders in the cartoon. Simply just take then the included posts made of translucent blue plastic, and then you just plug it into the end like this. Just like that. Once that's then plugged in, you get the starburst, or the end effect of that, and then that just clips onto the end like so. I yet to really honestly have my figure of steel will displayed with this, but there's that option also available as well. Something I didn't mention, though, when we had a look at steel will, just to move those out of the way for right now, is that you can also detach, although it's a little harder to do on these figures, you can detach this part of the arm. And if you wanted to just use the shoulder, for example, they have done it in the cartoon as well. They're not always firing their laser beams from their shoulders when they're always in flights. Sometimes they're actually just standing and they're shooting these out. So you can actually swap out, pop those off at the pop those, should say, off at the biceps section where they peg in place, and just then pop it back onto these arms, and you can use those instead. But we're going to, for right now at least, pop this back into place. Then I'll show you from there how we attach these onto his arms. So literally all you're just going to do for Quicksilver here, I want to call him Steel Will for a second, very easily just remove the arms, divorce them from either sides of his torso. And then from there, you're just going to take then the new arms, bend the hinge down, and sometimes while bending the hinge down, it ends up popping this part of the arm off also as well. Pop that back into place. And then from there, all you're then going to have to do, let's just get this all the way on here. Then from there, all you're going to do is find yourself a suitable hand. Say, for example, if you want to have the flying hands, then we're just going to go ahead and replace the hands. So let's go ahead and grab these hands for right now. I'm going to plug those in place. There we go. And then you're just going to do the exact same thing then on the other side. Take the wing arm, I should say. Plug this in place. And then, of course, making sure it hinges down. The hinges I've noticed on these figures are quite tight. So if you're having any problems to actually loosen up the joints, you can either force it, run the risk, of course, of breaking it, or you can also do the smarter thing of running a few passes with a hairdryer, or even submerging it in hot water just to loosen up the joints just a little bit. Then, of course, we're going to go ahead and change the hands. We're going to do it then on the other side also as well. Pop that in place. And really, then, again, the only option you have available then is either to go with this head sculpt, which is, again, the defaulted head, or he does also have the fanned or flapped down front, I guess, the faceplate that he has in the cartoon. I'm going to also get back to this more in a moment as well. So let's go ahead. Actually, you know what? Just before we do that, I want to show you guys what the head sculpt looks like defaulted out of the packaging. I think for me, at least, when it comes to displaying these ones on the shelf, so far at least, I've been displaying them with their faceplates up. Just so you get the chance to really see the work, the talented work that the artists over at Super7 have managed to sculpt into these figures' faces. While yes, they don't have the vat chrome finish, what they do have at least is bearing a very strong likeness to the way they look in the cartoon. Some of the earlier shots that we did see of Quicksilver had it look a little rougher than what we actually get physically in hand. I will say, though, in hand, it looks a lot better than maybe some of the earlier shots that we saw. Sometimes a lot of that can also be chalked up to the way that the person shoots it, with poor lighting, poor cameras. Sometimes can distort how a sculpt may actually look. Reviews like this certainly will always help to show you guys in hand, or as close as we could possibly get it in hand to your hands, to show you guys what these things actually look like. The head ball joints, I will say on the head here of Quicksilver, I always find myself having to push it down. Every single time I seem to move it, it wants to come free, at least from the ball joint. It gets a little on the more looser side. You can kind of see it's a little loose on this figure. But overall, like, the paint's really handled well here. There are a few little areas that have got a carryover of the gray that would really have belonged here in the top of his head. Finds a little bit onto his face, but that, of course, mileage may vary when it comes to certain figures. Head sculpt, though, I'm very happy overall with how this one turned out. If, though, you wanted to change out the head, it's very easy to remove. Just pop it off the ball joint, pop then on the new head sculpt, and this one does have the front down, flip down faceplate. Just pop this one back onto the ball joint here. There we go. Yeah, I mean, this might be the only exception, I think, to the rule, where I might even consider one. Ultimately, I almost feel like I want to get myself a second set of the Silverhawks figures so that I can have some displayed in flight pose with the wings like this, and then the other ones then with the human faces. Unfortunately, there are no flight stands that come included with these figures, so you might have to find a clever way to actually have these guys displayed on the shelf. I've actually seen a lot of really talented social media people posting images, at least, of how they've actually got their characters in flight. I might try to do something similar to that. So let's actually just revert this guy back to his regular body, just because it's going to be a little bit easier. By the way, the wings don't attach anywhere to the side of the figure's body. They literally just sit flush against the body, so it's not going to cause problems when it comes to moving the figure around for articulation purposes. But for right now, at least, we're going to remove the arms. We're going to put those to the side. We're going to go back to the way we had it started at the beginning of this review. Just pop in the original arms. Where was the other arm? Where did I put the other arm? Where did I put the other arm? The arm is oh, it's right there. Let's go ahead and pop that back into place. One thing I did also want to draw to your attention as well is, at least on this arm, he does also have the little communicator wristband. Now, unfortunately, one thing I have to say about this is anytime you're going to go to remove the hand, like this, for example, this band is separate. So just, be careful. Obviously, it's not attached permanently to the forearm. You can kind of help to bring it further up on the forearm, so it's not going to slide off if you ever try to change the hands. Just though, be careful, because really, obviously, you don't want to have to lose this in the process of changing out just the hands. I want to show you guys the detail that they've done to it. You've got the little red there, a little couple of buttons down below also as well, and some additional black's been added in there as well. It looks, again, very cartoon accurate. Let's just pop this off right now. We're going to go back to the way we had again at the beginning of this review. Pop the head back into place. The heads are actually fairly easy to move and change. Although, again, like this head on the defaulted heads, it's a little on the looser side. So I might just even maybe add a little bit of nail polish or something to the ball joint, just so the head sits a little loose, a little tighter than what it is right now. As for the rest of the figure's body, even though, again, proportionally, let's just move Tallyhawk here out of the way. Proportionally, I still feel like he should be a little bit smaller than Steel Wheel, for example, just to bring back in Steel Wheel. Steel Wheel was really always the biggest of the Silverhawks. And unfortunately, like when you're looking at them side to side, back to back, shoulder to shoulder, Quicksilver, for some reason, is taller than Steel Wheel. And again, it should really be the other way around. The problem also with Steel Wheel is the fact that he should really be like more of a darker gray like he is in the cartoon. They decided to paint him blue instead. But I do like the coloring that they've done here for Quicksilver, kind of giving us more what we would see in the cartoon, more of a matted silver finish. He's got a little bit of the yellow there on the front of the belt, and of course the one side of his body is a human arm, while the other side is completely covered in steel. Detail on this guy, for what little there is in the way of paint, more than makes up for it for the sculpt. I think well sculpted figure overall. For the articulation, though, on Quicksilver, starting first with his head, the head rotates all the way around. I love, again, the sculpting of the back of the hair like this. It does look down, it does look up, and it does also rock back and forth as well. As for the shoulders come out there on hinge joints after all. Whether you decide to display the figure with the wings or not, he still can come out easily at 90 degrees. You take those arms, you can rotate them all the way around. That's on both sides, of course. The figure does have a bicep swivel, possessing only just a single hinge in the elbow, but at least that's enough to have the forearm to rotate back and forth, and the hands, of course, rotate all the way around. Upper torso is on a ball joint. It doesn't so much move down very much, but it does allow at least the figure's torso to rock back and forth. He does also have the same thing kind of happening down below here for his abdomen, although, again, you're not really going to be able to move it all that much. The lower part of his body seems to be using a slightly softer plastic, but it still allows the legs to hinge out. They're on ball joints, it seems, or hinge joints on the insides, as you can see. The legs go forward, only a little bit, by the way. The legs also go back, and about halfway up the thigh, you can see there's a swivel cut right there. The swivel cut actually is not a swivel cut. I thought for a second, though, when looking at this, got this guy first out of the packaging, I'm like, oh, there's a cut right there in the thigh. And for a second, I may have fooled you. There's no swivel cut. It's actually just part of the molding right here. You'll see also it's nowhere to be found on the other side of the leg. So not to distract you, further down from that, the figure does have a single hinge in the knee that allows the lower leg at least to rotate back and forth. And the figure does have, for articulation in the toes, a hinge joint at the ankle, so that moves back and forth this way. It also allows the ankle to move the foot back and forth this way. And if you look to the bottom of it, the figure does have peg holes in the undersides of his feet. That for a second, I thought maybe you could have taken the laser effect that attaches onto the shoulders. Let's just grab it off to the side here. And you'd be able to attach onto the undersides of his feet. But unfortunately, the pegs, as you can see, are way too big. Or the peg holes are way too big. You can't fit them either way. I'm sure there probably could be something like an accessory pack that they could release a little bit later on that would give you the thrusters on the bottoms of the feet. But overall, a nice looking figure for Quicksilver. Yeah, yes, to be all honest, the thing about the figure is he is a little off-scaled. Again, when you really see that more happening is when you bring him in, like Steel Will, for example. And Steel Will really should be, I think based on the cartoon, just getting him to stand here, Steel Will, I feel, probably would be about here. And Quicksilver would be a little bit shorter than that. I think he's still bigger also than Bluegrass. I think they're probably going to be about the same size to one another. Now, for one reason or another, Quicksilver ends up being the biggest of the Silverhawk figures so far. Other than that, I think he really turned out nicely. I like the way they've actually also included two versions of Tallyhawk, of course, included the wings. And while there may not be any accessories specific to one or two episodes, they at least included the accessories that I would have expected to come include with a character like Quicksilver. All in all, job well done by the folks over at Super7. Because Quicksilver didn't come included with the display stand, and of course when it comes to wrapping up reviews or even just over the course reviews, I never really like to bring in anything that didn't come with the figure in the first place. I'm instead displaying him like he's going for a group hug rather than actually flying. I might try to fix that though when it comes to actually displaying this guy on the shelf. Whether I just take myself like a clear plastic podium where I can actually have the figure resting on top of it, or I might even just take some string and wrap it around the figure's waist and have it hanging that way. I'm honestly really considering getting a second one of all the Silverhawks at least, so I can have one displayed, maybe not necessarily Bluegrass, because Bluegrass would have not had it in the first place, but at least when it comes to Steel Will, Steel Heart, and now Quicksilver, I might just find myself actually picking up a second one of these, so I can have again the figure displayed with the faceplate down, and have one displayed with the faceplate up. For the purpose, of course, of Tallyhawk not balancing very well on the forearms. I've left them off for at least this part of the review, but I'm glad to see at least that they got two versions of Tallyhawk. They could have done a workaround, I suppose, where they could have had poppable wings that would have attached by ball joints, using then the same body, using then the same tail, and then just have swappable wings instead. Honestly, though, I prefer that we got two Tallyhawks instead of having to break down a Tallyhawk, take off all the parts, and essentially just rebuild him every single time. As for the figure itself, overlooking the one thing about the figure being a little bit taller than the other two that we've looked at already, I do like that this one did turn out the way that it did. Yes, it doesn't have the chrome finish, which again might be a deterrent for those that really wanted these to look toy-specific. But considering already that we've gotten ourselves toy versions of the Thundercats, I think again it would be safe to say that they're probably going to be releasing the Silverhawks in the same format, releasing them, of course, the way they look in the cartoon first, but then a little later to that, we're using, again, the molds. It's always good that any company can get the most out of their molds and not just releasing Quicksilver and the rest of the Silverhawks as they would have looked in the toy lines also as well. Yes, this guy doesn't come included with any really episode-specific accessories. I'm using the bunny ears behind the camera here. But I think, again, he comes with everything that he would need to have come with. And again, I like the idea that he comes included with those little beam holes in his shoulders, which, again, you can either just use with his flying arms that I've got right now, or simply just using the sound effects behind the camera, you can just pop the ball joints off or pop the biceps off at those peg joints and simply then just use those shoulder pieces for when you have the figure displayed with just the regular arms. All in all, a good looking Quicksilver. It was certainly worth the wait to finally have this guy displayed with the rest of the Silverhawks. Now, of course, the rest of the Wave 1 will then give us the more monsterized version of Monstar. But also we're going to be getting the other Steel Twin as Steelheart's part of this wave also as well. So we will be looking at the rest of the figures that make up Wave 1 in upcoming reviews. If you guys are interested to get this one for yourself, I actually did find this one over on Entertainment Earth's website too, as of right now at least. They have all of Wave 1, and I think they still have all of Wave 2. So if you're a little behind when it comes to catching up on Silverhawks figures, head on over to Entertainment Earth, and again, you could get yourself Series 1 or Wave 1 right now, and Wave 2 I think they also still have in stock also as well. But what do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you had the chance to pick up Quicksilver? And have you been collecting the Ultimate Silverhawk figures? Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the line so far. Also as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and on board to see the rest of the Silverhawks Wave 1, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you turn on the bell notification so you're going to always get those reminders, those friendly notifications, those friendly little taps on your shoulder saying, hey, just to let you know that the guy behind the camera has posted up something new. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.